What is Britain's most extravagant country home? Well, with a suite of 18 dramatic staterooms, unlike anything else in the country, and extravagant Elizabethan architecture, largely unchanged for 400 years, Burghley House might just be it. Stay tuned to find out more about England's largest Elizabethan home. If you've seen my video on England's top 10 country homes, you'll know that Burghley House features highly on the list. Number 5 in fact. I use the word best quite loosely, in fact because the video focuses largely on extravagance, size, opulence, architecture, that kind of thing. And of course, these kind of lists are very much subjective, and in all honesty, ask me on a different day what my favourite country homes are, and I might tell you something different. And what does best actually mean? Ask me what I think the most beautiful country home in England is, and I might say Burton Agnes Hall. I am, in fact, a big fan. I might also say Haddon Hall because it's absolutely magical. But where does Burghley House fit into all of this? Only number 5 in my list, you might be saying. Well, Burghley House is truly a magnificent country home, and is likely representative of the largest, most extravagant and best preserved Prodigy House in existence today. Just to clarify, a Prodigy House is an ostentatious mega mansion built by the richest and most influential courtiers, largely in the Elizabethan period, and largely with the intention of enticing the monarch and her retinue to visit. Good value for money then. Other excellent examples include Hardwicke Hall, Longleat House and Wallerton Hall. In my opinion, at the minute at least, Burghley is the best of them all, and with perhaps the exception of Hardwicke, likely the most recognisable. Of course, I don't say this lightly. Burghley House is absolutely striking, inside and out. The 16th century architecture, whilst typically symmetrical in design, has an almost Gothic feel about it, and the beautiful decorative chimneys have dominated the skyline for nearly 500 years. You would be forgiven for thinking that such a grand residence has been built for a duke, or perhaps the monarch herself, but in actual fact, Burghley was one of 3 grand houses commissioned by William Cecil Lord Burghley, Queen Elizabeth I's chief advisor and Lord High Treasurer. Born in the parish of Bourne in Lincolnshire in 1520, William Cecil came from a minor noble family of Welsh ancestry. His grandfather David had been a favourite of Henry VII, and his father Richard had been a minor courtier to both Henry VIII and Edward VI. Both had been lawyers, and William was destined to follow in their footsteps. Educated locally at Grantham and Stanford, William showed promise from a young age and later attended St John's College, Cambridge. Prior to actually obtaining his degree, however, he was pulled out by his father and thrust into the legal profession. Having spent much of his early career working for the Lord Protector Somerset, following the Protector's spectacular fall from grace, Cecil hit the first bump in his career, and even spent a short period of time in the Tower. But these things happen to the best of us, and undeterred, Cecil dusted himself off and fell in with the power of the time, John Dudley, Earl of Warwick, later Duke of Northumberland. And like a fresh-faced Tony Blair, things could only get better for William Cecil, who by this point was making a name for himself, and proved to be a very effective bureaucrat. He was later appointed as second secretary to Edward VI, and even received a knighthood. A Protestant, Cecil seemingly withdrew from court under the oppressive rule of Mary Tudor and became involved with the young Princess Elizabeth. As Elizabeth's surveyor of estates, Cecil was someone the future Queen could look to for advice, and the two developed a close bond. When Elizabeth ascended the throne in 1558, Cecil was an obvious choice for Secretary of State and dedicated 40 years of his life as Queen Elizabeth's most trusted advisor, just 4 years short of her entire reign. He was created the first Baron of Burghley, became Knight of the Garter, and even served as Lord High Treasurer. Now that's quite an achievement. Now we have a slightly better understanding of the man responsible for Burghley House, we can start to understand how it came to be. When construction started in 1555, William Cecil was already a very rich and influential man. Unlike many of his peers, however, he lacked a significant lineage. But Cecil was wealthy enough to found his own dynasty, and, possessed of estates at Burghley, what better way was there to elevate his social standing and project his perceived importance than by constructing the finest palace the country had ever seen? Cecil was certainly his own architect, and although keen to see progress on Burghley's construction, work on the east and south ranges stalled in around 1564 when he became distracted by the purchase of Theobald Manor in Hertfordshire. The building period of Burghley House consequently took 32 years, with the north front finally being completed in 1587. This clearly gave Cecil and his mason Henrik opportunity to make some changes along the way. The west front, with its great gatehouse, had initially intended to serve as the main entrance, but was substituted for the north front. So huge was the gatehouse, in fact, that a large obelisk clock tower was added to the east front inner courtyard porch to act as a sort of counterbalance. It also seems likely that the Great Hall was rebuilt on a much larger scale. I find this quite interesting, as by this point such communal spaces were already falling out of fashion. Also interesting, as this could have been even larger. Whilst most of the exterior architecture is original, some alterations were made by subsequent owners. In the late 17th century, alterations were made to the south front, which largely resulted in the ground floor open gallery being enclosed, and under the supervision of the 9th Earl in the 18th century, Lancelot Capability Brown made further alterations. As you might expect, Brown worked his magic on the gardens and the park, and also advised the Earl on interior alterations. Speaking of the interiors then, as I may have already hinted, these are absolutely world class. The interiors, however, would be unrecognisable to a time-travelling William Cecil, and can largely be attributed to the 5th and 9th Earls. It was during the 17th century that the 5th Earl and his Countess absolutely transformed Burghley's interiors beyond recognition following a number of grand tours to Europe. They adopted the Baroque style, filled the house with paintings, tapestries and sculptures, and hired the Italian Painter Verrio, who is responsible for the mind-boggling painted ceilings we see throughout the house. The 9th Earl, Brownlow, although an advocate of the contemporary neoclassical style, thankfully retained much of the design details incorporated by his grandfather. Visitors to the house today are in for a real treat, as much of the house is open to the general public. As usual, I won't show you every single space within the house, as I absolutely encourage you to visit yourself, but let me show you what to expect. Entering the house via the entrance lobby, visitors will first experience the old kitchen. This is actually one of just a few rooms at Burghley that would have looked the same in Tudor times. My dad was fascinated with this kitchen when we visited, reminiscing with the tour guide about cooking proper Yorkshire puddings and something my grandma had called a range. I had to remind him that he wasn't alive in the 16th century. At least, I don't think he was. Anyway, onwards and upwards. The first floor is where the magic really happens. Prior to entering the spectacular staterooms, we have the antechapel, chapel and billiard room. These rooms are all quite lovely, but nothing quite prepares you for what comes next. The bow room is the first jaw-dropping moment in my opinion. This large open space was originally intended as the state dining room by the 5th Earl, and features painted walls and ceilings inspired by Greek mythology. The bow room was later used by the 9th Earl as a music room and to host performances. The staterooms that follow are honestly some of the finest interior spaces Britain has to offer. The brown drawing room is one I am particularly drawn to, and whilst quite restrained compared to the rest, I love the fact that Queen Victoria slept in the small bed that still occupies the room when she visited the house as a young girl in 1835. Some other favourites of mine include the Chinese-themed blue silk dressing room, the second George room with its incredible state bed and curtain hangings, the stunning 3rd George room, its walls adorned with magnificent Italian paintings, and the lovely oak-panelled 4th George room. The wood gets its colour from strong dark ale. The George rooms were used by Queen Victoria and Prince Albert on their most royal visit in 1844. If you were wondering who George was, then this was the 5th Earl's dog, Georgie. Or King George I. I forget which. Probably the latter. Or was it? No, it was. The Heaven Room. Ostentatious, incredible, beautiful, mind-boggling. All of the above, perhaps? Either way, you cannot help but to be utterly blown away by this absolute spectacle, considered Antoni Verrio's greatest masterpiece. The ceilings and walls are essentially a single vast painting depicting scenes from ancient mythology. It's absolutely extraordinary. At the centre of the room sits a giant solid silver wine cooler, believed to be the largest of its kind in existence. From heaven we descend into hell. Or at least the hell staircase, and by descend I mean we go next door. This was actually Verrio's last commission at Burghley. Very much in debt, relieved of his assistants and working alone, it took Verrio 11 months to complete his magnificent ceiling. But boy was it worth his efforts. This work of art shows the entrance to hell, depicted as the enormous gaping mouth of a cat, with tormented, devoured souls within. I think this is actually a depiction of my mind after coming home from a 15-hour shift. The walls were actually painted in the early 19th century, not that you would know, and the stunning stone cantilevered staircase was installed in 1786 and leads visitors down to the final major room of the house. At 68 feet in length and 60 feet in height, the Great Hall is quite a vast space. You can imagine the grand banquets that would have been held here back in the 16th century, and this continued to be the hall's main function right the way through to Queen Victoria's visit in 1844. In fact, this grand hall is still largely used for entertainment today, and serves as a venue for concerts and other social functions. As you've seen, the house's interiors are absolutely spectacular, and combined with the largely original Elizabethan architecture, the Burghley estate serves as a ready-made film set. Surprisingly though, the house has probably featured in less film and TV productions than you might think. Those scenes from the Da Vinci Code will always stick in my mind. Here, the Heaven Room and the Hell Staircase serve as some of the backdrops to Gandolfo's house. But most people, of course, will recognise Burghley from the 2005 movie adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. Here the house stands in as Rosings Park, the fictional, ostentatious home of Mr. Darcy's aunt, Lady Catherine. Burghley House features in some of the exterior shots, with the Heaven Room featuring as Lady Catherine's extravagant drawing room. Burghley House is certainly one of the most extravagant country homes in Britain, and probably one of the most significant. Beauty, though, is in the eye of the beholder, and I know the ostentatious interiors will not be for everyone. Whatever our opinions, however, I'm sure we can all agree that the succession of architects and designers who have been involved in the evolution of Burghley House absolutely achieved their overarching objectives to utterly wow and overwhelm visitors for years to come. Burghley is truly a national treasure, and one of Britain's finest country homes. Hi guys, thank you so much for watching this video and making it through to the end. If you've enjoyed the video, or you've learned something, or you've just enjoyed the pretty pictures, then I'd really appreciate it if you could give the video a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and also if you hit that bell icon, then I'll give you a notification every time I release a new video, which fortunately isn't very often, so don't panic, you're not going to be getting notifications all the time. And one more thing, I'm also on Instagram at eheritage.uk, so if you could check me out on there, that would be absolutely awesome. Thanks again, thanks for watching, and stay safe.